I think today is a very exciting example of how education can be different because not one size fits all. I believe that there are students in this country who have real potential, but they have to navigate a very narrow corridor to maintain high performance while also retaining their own identity as individuals with other aspects to their life. The New Zealand Performance Academy will be designed to ensure that students who have real sporting potential can develop that potential to its fullest extent while also achieving high academic grades so that they've covered other aspects of their life. It also is an example of partnership within the community. This campus is an extremely innovative piece of equipment. This campus is an extremely innovative institution with some wonderful equipment, as you've seen. The question is how you ensure that within the community it's used in as many different ways as possible. You currently have students in the Phoenix Academy, about 18 of them. Those students are part of a high performance program for one team, and they're making use of this equipment while also attending school elsewhere. Our vision with the New Zealand Performance Academy is a school that will enable students from all different codes, initially football and rugby, to be able to develop their sporting potential while maintaining their academic options for life. Along with 14 other charter schools that have been announced in the past year, it shows that education can be different because one size doesn't fit all, and it means that the range of options for parents and students will be as diverse as the aspirations and abilities of New Zealand students. Really happy to take any questions about this or other charter schools or other issues.
Why is the government funding a sports academy? Wouldn't this be better suited to the private sector to fund?
Well, the government is funding the education of these students through a charter school. The charter school is partnering with the Sports Academy to access some of their equipment as part of their offering. However, the funding available for these students' education is exactly the same as if the students stayed at a state school. They're just working on using their resources smarter to generate a more interesting and innovative option.
Can you talk us through the demand of charter schools?
Yeah, we've had 48 applications of people that want to operate charter schools. Sadly, we can't fund all of those. Only a small portion of all those that have applied so far, around about 1 in 10 have actually got over the line. But that shows there's a lot of demand, and the charter schools that we do approve are high quality.
Do you see this helping the Phoenix?
Look, I really hope it helps New Zealand teams win on the field, but our primary goal is to ensure that young New Zealanders who have real sporting talent can go to a place where their talent is cultivated and they cover their academic bases. That's got to be the win-win, because if you're a charter school, you sign a contract. If the students don't show up and the students don't achieve academically, we can take away your contract. Charter schools are the only schools in New Zealand that can actually be shut down if the students don't pass, and that is absolutely critical here. These schools are not a soft touch, they're not a school for jocks, they're a school for high performers. You can do your sporting stuff if you meet those academic targets. No other school in New Zealand has that deal.
And will it be a school for boys and girls?
Absolutely. We do not discriminate. There's students that have sporting potential, and as we've seen in recent times, we just saw the women's under-20 training here. This should be an environment where young people with sporting aspirations can be inspired by older sports people who've made it a few steps further in their journey, so that they can feel normalised, they can see what success looks like, they can see what bad behaviour needs to be avoided. I think a lot of young people could do with more mentoring, and that's one of the things I see happening with this concept.
What was the demand that you heard to have a sports-focused charter school?
It depends on the quality of the application that's put before the Charter School Authorisation Board. So these guys had somebody with a proven track record of operating successful charter schools. That's Karen. She was previously involved with the successful Villa Education Trust schools. They had a very compelling vision. Remember, the people on the Charter School Authorisation Board, very conservative educators. You've got people like Justine Mann, who used to be the chair of St Cuthbert's, which is a high-performing academic private girls' school. So she always goes hard on, is your academic proposition credible? And finally, some innovative partnering. No one else can do this. By partnering with this campus, by having access to professional sports teams and having educators who can raise academic standards, you can create an environment for young students that didn't exist elsewhere.
Can you walk through the kind of academic criteria that the school will need to meet, as well as the sports elements to it?
Yeah, so they'll be teaching the curriculum, and the outcomes will be measured against students with similar levels of advantage or disadvantage in the state system, and they're expected to do as well or better as students who have a similar statistical profile in the state system.
How many students will this benefit?
Well, initially it could be up to 100. Obviously, it depends on how many apply, but their initial target is 100. I've just been speaking to the people here. They said, look, they've got room for 100 in the building that will be renovated before they start at the beginning of next year. But there's possibilities on this campus that it could be many more than that, but 100 is the beginning.
How do people actually get into the school?
Well, they have to apply, and they have to show that they are committed to the character and the mission of the school, which is obviously elite sports while covering your academic bases. And if you're a student who feels that you could fit into that environment, then you can apply. You're not going to be rejected if you don't have the kind of bench pressing prowess that people like me have. However, obviously if you're not on board for elite sport, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. I mean, I believe, if this had been around in my time, I'd always certainly be in the ABs by now.
If you're not playing rugby or football, what do you do?
Well, the vision of the school is that it will expand to further codes over time. Obviously, it's something that if it's worth doing, you do it right. So if they have one person who's interested in, say, sailing, and they don't really have the capacity to teach that and really help them achieve excellence, they might not do that straight away. But initially, if you take football and rugby, that is a substantial portion of all the sports people in New Zealand today. You can think about other codes: basketball, very fast growing; netball, a Kiwi classic; cricket, another one. Then by the time you get to those, you've got a pretty substantial range of the options people take.
How much will it cost parents to send their kids?
Parents won't be charged, so this is a state school funded by the taxpayer at the same rate as a state school would be funded if it was, Waikofi Intermediate or any other school.
And do you stay on site?
I think some may, but it is also a day school as I understand it. Yeah.
Given the strike action this week, do you expect more people to swap to charter schools?
Look, I think there's a range of reasons why people choose charters. I note that people who work at charters are often driven by a mission to succeed and reaching those performance targets, so they're less interested in playing politics. But look, ultimately, the government's got to resolve the strike action, and the teachers need to come back to the table just as the primary school teachers have.
What's your message to the teachers' union about charter schools?
Well, frankly, why would you be opposed to more options? Why would you try and force one size to fit all? And I think the teachers' unions have to decide, are charter schools really so different they want to oppose them, or are they really just doing things that the state school system could already do? If they're doing things the state school system can already do, then it's not clear why they oppose them. If they are doing things the state school system can't do, then surely they should welcome the opportunity for the teaching profession to have more interesting jobs in different settings, and for students to be able to learn in different ways in different settings. These are positives.
How many state schools have become charter schools, and will more convert?
So at this point, there haven't been any that have opened as state schools. However, at least 2, we estimate 4 will open as state schools next year. There's been about 20 that are at some point in the pipeline, but there's a process of several years. So the ones that will open as charter schools next year actually started in 2024. There's a lot more that have started in 2025. And I suspect that give it another year, you could have a couple of dozen.
Are you expecting to announce any more before the end of 2025?
Yeah, I am. There's at least another couple that are still finalising their contracts, and when the ink is dry, we'll be out there. I don't know if they will have as exciting venues with cryogenic freezers or bench presses, but we'll see what we can do.